Welcome to 5 Minutes of Momentum. These episodes are a short 5-minute burst of inspiration, motivation, and massive action. If you need that little kick up the butt to get things moving and to inspire you to take massive action, then every single Thursday I'll be sending you through a 5-minute episode to download, digest, and implement to finish your week off strong. Are you ready to get started? Let's go.
Why does scaling feel so hard? I feel like I have this conversation so regularly, and scaling is not for everyone. And I think you can build a really successful business, whether you're making a couple of $100,000 a year, and be quite happy to not want to scale it to 7 figures. And that's absolutely totally fine, right? And yet, if you do want to, it's being conscious of how you are approaching your scalability of your business. So before you scale, one of the biggest things, the biggest lessons that I've learned, and I'm yet to hit the $1 million mark, but absolutely working towards it. One of the things that I always keep reminding myself is simpler is always faster. What often happens when we think about scaling, we think about adding more and doing more. But really what's actually getting the most traction is when you're simplifying and doing less, but doing those things that you're doing less, you're doing them better. So we need to get clearer on what actually works and moves the needle in your business. And it starts right back from your offers. So getting really clear on your offers, making sure that they, 1, are profitable, 2, are scalable, and 3, are really clear problem solver for your ideal client, and then meeting people where they're at. Overcomplicated offers don't scale. And offers that aren't clearly going to be solving a problem for an ideal client who is already aware of the problem and wants to actively solve it, again, is making it so much harder for yourself to get traction. So this is where we need to get clearer on your messaging, and we need to make sure that we're meeting your ideal client where they're at and presenting an offer that is an absolute no-brainer. And this is where sometimes people get really stuck, really stuck. And I have this happen a lot with my clients because we've been in our business for so long and we're like, we think we know what works. And we need to also be looking at the data. If the data is telling us that it's not landing, that people aren't downloading our stuff, that people aren't buying in a really simple structure, right, in a really simple process, then we need to ask ourselves why that is. Because if the offer is absolutely meeting people where they're at and it's solving a problem they already know they have, why is it taking longer for them to convert? And the other thing when it comes to scalability is it does require more trust. And if you have been neglecting your audience and neglecting trust building activities, neglecting lead generation, then scaling can be much harder, right? Because you end up just selling to the same people over and over and over again. The other thing I want to highlight here is your mindset, because when we are scaling, the way that we approach scaling can feel hard depending on how fast you want to go, depending on where you're spending your time, and how you're approaching the challenges. Because if you're wanting to scale, one of the things I would absolutely suggest you focus on is how you look at all the data in your business, reflecting on it, reviewing on it, and improving it every step of the way. Because that's actually what's going to help you scale. And I remember listening to a podcast actually the other day, and she was like, if I wanted to make $1 million, I would have one product that solved one problem to one audience, and I would go and I would sell it over and over and over again until I got it right. We're often trying to sell too many things at once. And that's what's actually causing the confusion of our audience. It's actually not positioning you in a really effective way. It's causing people to not really decide, right? And so I absolutely agree with that advice. One thing, you sell to one person over 1 year and go hard until you get it right. Because when you are focused on one thing and you are really looking at the data, so you're not just like selling it and hoping and wishing and praying, you're looking at, okay, how am I attracting people? And what is actually my funnel for doing that? And what's working, what's not working? What's landing with people, what's not landing with people? What's getting traction, what's not getting traction? 2, how am I then taking those eyes at attention on my business and then turning them into leads? How am I getting them off social media? How am I getting them off wherever they're finding me into my funnels, right? Then I look at the funnel. And this is where it gets hard, right? This is where people usually stop. They go, and they don't want to refine things. They just go, oh, it's not working. Scrap that. I'll try something new. Whereas really, if you want to scale, you're going to have to get really good at looking at everything behind the scenes to be like, okay, where did the emails drop off? Where did people buy? What was the hook that worked? What was the sales call to action that really worked? And getting something that's working so effective. And then obviously then the market changes and then it fucks with us, right? Like I get it. It can feel really hard. And I know that we've experienced that over the last year where there's been constant change. And the introduction of AI has obviously impacted people in a lot of ways. So again, I know it feels hard sometimes, but again, it's the way that you're approaching it with your mindset. If you're approaching it from a place of like, oh my God, nothing is working and it's really hard, and why do things always have to be so hard for me? Instead of actually going, how can I be more strategic? I am looking at this as data, not as evidence that I'm failing, not as evidence that things are shit, like not evidence that things are hard. I'm actually looking at like, great, this is more information for me. This is more information for me to be able to perfect this. What else can I test? What else can I test? What else can I test in order to then see what lands? So if we're not approaching it from that mindset, it can absolutely feel fucking hard. And as well, if we're having a timeline that is much shorter than it needs to be. And that's hard to even know what that is, right? If we're focused on the timeline, whereas I actually just don't focus on the timeline. I have my goals, but I'm not like, I have to hit it by this month, right? I need to be like, okay, what's testing and measuring? Where am I focusing my attention? What's working? What's not working? What's the data? What's my audience telling me? What's the data telling me in order for me to make more informed decisions? I hope this helps. And I am here with you. I'm on the same journey as you, babe. I see you. I honor you in all the hard work that you're putting in. I see you in all the effort, your exhaustion. I get it, but keep going. It's going to be worth it.